Washington, D.C., the top story being what we led with. D.C. Councilmember Trayon White arrested and charged with bribery. We now know that according to the feds, back in 2024, White allegedly accepted $156,000 in cash payments in exchange for using his position as a D.C. council member to pursue government employees to extend several D.C. contracts. Our very own David Kaplan has been inside the courtroom where Mr. White made an appearance earlier today and joins us right now on the Live Zone. What's the latest, David?
Guy, good to be with you here on the Live Zone. Just getting organized back here in the car. We just got out of court. The hearing just ended. This was Trayon White's initial appearance on these charges of bribery, this one charge of bribery that you just talked about. The court hearing was about 20 to 25 minutes. It was initial appearance stuff. So just an outline of the charges against him. We've obviously gotten this 38-page charging document that I'm still in the process of going through. It was just unsealed a couple of minutes before this happened, a couple of minutes before the hearing started. So just a couple of notes here. He was released on his own recognizance. So Trayon White just walked out of the D.C. federal courthouse. He did not answer any of our questions as he walked out. In fact, one of his supporters swatted my phone out of my hand as we were trying to ask him some questions. So no comment from him. He got into a vehicle and he drove away. Can also tell you that his attorney had no comment at this time on the charges against Councilmember Trayon White. So that's sort of the very latest in terms of the perspective of the charged that we are trying to get as well. As for the perspective of the government, Guy, you just sort of laid this out. This is a very comprehensive document. Indications are there was a government source that is a confidential source that really was the person that Councilmember White was interacting with and receiving, according to the agreements that they had, a 3% kickback on a handful of D.C. government contracts. And essentially what the government is laying out here is the agreement is that if certain contracts within D.C. government are extended, then White would receive a 3% of whatever that grant is. So that is how that $156,000 number has been calculated by the government. Because those are sort of, that was just sort of, there's a ledger in some of these, this court document. There are pictures of Councilmember White in the car. There are screenshots of sort of laying out Councilmember White saying that, he was hoping to procure and acquire money from some of these things. So it's all very diligently laid out. And we have to assume this was a fast-moving investigation, Guy, because this started this first payment was made in June of 2024. Wow. So they're alleged to have been sort of four payments, four contracts that Councilmember White had allegedly been dealing with this confidential source, this confidential informant for the FBI to sort of funnel extend these contracts and have this money funneled to him, are the allegations by prosecutors. So that's sort of the scheme. And I just walked you through sort of the response thus far from Councilmember White and his attorney, which is nothing at this time.
Yeah, David, obviously you made mention of actually seeing the council member, and I know he didn't get a chance to really say anything to you or anyone else. His demeanor, though, I'm curious. What did he look like? Disheveled in any way, form, or fashion?
No, I mean, I've covered Councilmember White for a couple of years now, and he appeared with a gray sweatshirt in court today, and then he had changed into some other clothes before he left. Again, didn't answer our questions. I can tell you when he walked into the courthouse, he had a couple dozen supporters in the courtroom that were with him. He sort of gave them a nod and put his hand over his heart, sort of paying respects to those who came to support him. And again, there were a couple dozen that were there, but no, he answered all the judges' questions in terms of he seemed to have sort of an understanding of what the rules are for him being released, which, just to walk through, he will have to surrender his passport, so no international travel. If he wants to leave a 50-mile radius of the District of Columbia, he has to notify the court. He doesn't have to get approval. He just has to notify the court if he's leaving. He indicated he had a trip to Memphis, Tennessee, that he was planning to go on later this week. He also, so this is where we get into sort of the public component of this in his public position. He is allowed, according to what they talked about today, he is allowed to have conversations with people who are witnesses in the case. However, he is not specifically allowed to talk to them about the case. He still remains an active member of DC Council, and in doing that and doing his job and in discharging his duties as a DC Council member, he's going to have to talk to a lot of people. Yeah. So the indication is that he can have conversations with people who may or may not be informants. We don't have or involved with the case, witnesses. We don't have that list of people, but he cannot specifically talk about the case. Those were things that he, through his attorney, also agreed to as part of all this.
It's no secret, David. He is expected to, or at least prior to this, win a third term in November. We're getting word, and it hasn't been confirmed as yet, but we have heard several sources state that as a council member, you are not allowed to have any felonies. Have you heard anything about that?
I got to tell you, Guy, I am not. That is something I can actually make a call on. But we rushed to get into court here, and he just walked out of the courtroom about 15 minutes ago. So the official rules of that, I'm still. I can work to get that and have that by 3 o'clock when we're on the DMV zone. But innocent until proven guilty. So yeah. Councilmember White has been charged with this one count of bribery. We don't know anything about what the defense strategy is going to be. Again, his attorney didn't release anything on that. But I got to tell you, there are parts of the indictment that sort of lay out quotes from White, because these were recorded meetings, where he says, I want to help, I want to get into mental health, and so who knows what the defense argument will be. But from the government's perspective, this was reading this document. It was a fast-moving and quickly gotten together investigation, but these are recorded meetings. They're recorded. They're screenshots of text messages. There are transcripts of these private meetings that happened inside of particularly of a vehicle outside of his apartment complex. So there's a lot of evidence here that the government has, and we don't really have any good insights about what the defense will be, but that's something that'll play out for sure as this case proceeds.
The classic case of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. We'll see if that actually took place. Once again, our very own David Kaplan reporting just outside of the courtroom where Councilmember Trayon White just posted bond minutes ago. Excellent reporting, David. Truly appreciate you, sir.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.